Good evening. I would like to call to order the Wilmette Park District regular member of the Board of Park Commissioners this Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. Could I begin with a roll call?
Commissioner Duffy?
Present.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Kozlowskis?
Here.
Commissioner Clark?
Here.
Commissioner Goebel?
Here.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Could I begin with the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda of the April 11th, 2022 regular board meeting, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
Was there a second?
I'll second.
All right, roll call. I'm sorry, does anyone want to remove any item on the consent agenda for any reason? Great, all right, roll call.
Commissioner Duffy?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Goebel?
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch?
Yes.
Consent agenda is approved.
All right, at this point, I'm going to revise the agenda slightly. Item 7.0 is actually unfinished business. 7.1, the West Park Master Plan discussion. I think it would make sense to bring that to the forefront of the agenda. I'd like to ask Executive Director Wilson to give us a brief update about what transpired over the past week, and then we can have a brief discussion and then open the floor to public comment and recognition of visitors.
Sure. So since this board last met, the district has appeared before the Wilmette Zoning Board of Appeals twice. First on March 16th to initially present the application, and then again on April 6th where a full formal hearing was conducted, allowing us to present our application and also allowing for members of the public, both for and against the application, to speak on the topic as well. In the end, the zoning board, who were short one individual, voted 6-0 to not recommend the application to the Village Board of Trustees. During the hearing, 3 different zoning board members remarked that they could support the proposed paddle tennis courts, but could not support the overall application because of the inclusion of pickleball. They, along with the remaining zoning board members, conveyed that they felt the district had not done enough due diligence in the creation of the overall plan. While we could choose to sit and debate this characterization, in the end, this feedback is valuable nonetheless. To that end, it is staff's recommendation that the board consider amending our application and remove pickleball courts and the related lights, as well as the 2 northern paddle tennis courts, leaving just the addition of the 2 southern paddle courts, the expansion of the hut, and the related decking. The reason for this is that the 2 courts will go a long way to meet the current demand of the facility. Also, when we add the 2 new courts, the hut will need to be expanded as it was designed for the capacity of the original 6 courts contemplated during the original design. Also, all the variations needed for this work have been granted previously when the facility was first built. Also, by installing the southern courts as compared to the northern courts, flexibility will be preserved for any future deliberations regarding paddle, pickle, or playgrounds. The deliberations of these other aspects of the plan should continue, allowing for more dialogue with the community, more formal studies to be completed, and ultimately a more amenable plan could possibly be developed that also meets the recreational demands of the community.
Great, thank you, Steve. And just a point of reference, I know that there had been some discussion about some potential modification. The reality was, I think at the zoning board hearing, a couple of the members had asked why we didn't present any adjustments. We really didn't have a mechanism by which we could do that between the 2 meetings unless we had called a special meeting here.
Well, if I can comment on that as well, I thought that the zoning board member, Ryrie Pellerton, who used to be a member of this board, said that between the meetings, we were told to modify or something to that effect, that they expected modification between the 2 meetings. But if I'm not mistaken, please fill in the details, Steve. The reason that we had to have 2 meetings was because the notification was written wrong for the first meeting. And so therefore we had to renotice people with the right wording because however the wording was, something to the effect of 2 paddle courts as opposed to 4 paddle courts. So there was a mistake in the writing of the notification, which is why we had to have 2 meetings. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, that was a part of it. There was also several board members missing from that zoning hearing, so the village staff felt that it was most likely going to get continued over 2 meetings any which way, for whatever reason, they know better than I. But you're absolutely right. The inaccuracy in the notification was something that we did not want to risk and have a formal hearing based upon.
Okay.
At any rate, I'd like to open the floor to comments about the proposed modifications.
Yes, I mean, Stephen, question, can you go back over again the expansion of the hut and why that's necessary at this point?
Sure. The original design of the facility was to accommodate 6 courts. If you look at the 2013 plans, it called for initially building 4 courts, and if the demand was there, 2 more courts to the north of the facility, configured differently than how we ended up ultimately building them in 2017. So the hut itself was designed to meet that amount of court activity. Now we are building beyond the original 6 courts the hut was contemplated to serve. Therefore, you're going to need more hut space, most likely.
There's probably capacity
requirement?
limitations too, I would imagine. I'm sorry?
Is it an occupancy like, is there like a per person per court, like, requirement that you have to meet? Is that the?
Yeah, yes, I know that the fire department sets those occupancy levels.
Similar to parking, where the certain building, square footage per building size requires so many parking spaces. It's,
So doing this proposal, that leads to the parking question. Would that cause any parking concerns, given that we previously needed a parking variance?
You know, let me jump in on this. I think that we have one of our consultants here who is going to talk a little bit about parking. And I think I think not at this point though, Tom. Not at this point yet. Well, actually, I guess if you want, go ahead.
Sorry.
Fire away.
Good evening.
can we
Go ahead.
up? Or?
All good.
Yeah, pull it all the way up.
Well, yeah, does it work?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Are we,
What's that?
maybe I started the questioning too soon. Were you going to go to public comment first?
I was
or-
going to allow us
sorry.
to comment a little bit about the proposed plan. And then if there seems to be support within the board, I was going to open up to public comment. And then I was going to give us a chance to ask the consultants and some of the staff some additional
And
questions.
when you say proposed plan, what you're referring to is the modification of the original proposal to the 2 courts with the expansion of the hut that you're discussing.
To basically separate the plan into
Yes.
2 parts, what's commonly referred to as the West Park Master Plan, to delay that, push it back, give us time to, again, receive additional feedback and discussion and consult with experts, et cetera. But short term, because we have a date with the village board at the end of this month, to go forward with a smaller portion of the plan, which at least some of the zoning board members indicated that they felt they could support, to address the known demands that we know we have for paddle for the coming season. I think realistically, if we don't move forward with something with the village board, either at this meeting or something very shortly, we'll lose the opportunity to address that need before the next coming season.
And Mike, procedurally, how does that work? So we have a plan that was voted on by zoning, and we have that upcoming at the village board meeting. So procedurally, how do we?
Ultimately, that's something the village is going to need to decide. It's within their purview to, I think we're allowed to modify a plan at any point. They could decide that they want to send that back to the zoning board for additional feedback. And generally, if there are major modifications, especially if there's some sort of an expansion of the plan, they tend to do that. I recall some cases with Ronald Knox where it went back and forth a little bit with some changes. But I think generally, if there's a reduction in the scope of the plan, there may be less of a need to send it back to the zoning board, especially in light of the fact that these variation and special use requests have been granted either once or twice already for essentially the same, other than there's a question of the quantity of the courts. So I think it's ultimately going to be a village decision. It's something that the village staff and the village board will have to decide, but they can't weigh in until we make a request. So the next step would be for us to, modify the plan, present it to them, and then see where they go with it.
Any comments is what you're looking
Right, I'm looking
us
for
all
comments. Do people think this is a good idea? Do people have concerns?
I think this is a good idea in order to provide the courts for the demand that we already know is there. And the expansion of the hut, the decking, these two courts, definitely, I don't think create the impact that the initial plan that went before the zoning board created.
So initial reaction just to what Steve shared, I do fully support pulling back right now and looking more carefully and gathering more information. And I think it's important to recognize that this board, the full board, approved the initial concept back in 2021. I don't remember if it was the November or December meeting, before we had an opportunity to go to the public, right? We approved the concept, and then the next step was take it to the public. And so then we had that the first public hearing, when we started to hear some of the concerns. And at that point, I know there were some tweaks to the playground and there were some small adjustments, but the board, it was discussed mostly with staff and with committee, but the full board hasn't had an opportunity to really deliberate since we've been receiving the significant amount of community feedback we have in this entire process. So certainly with the zoning board, not approving what was on the table and the combination of the public concern, I fully agree with Steve that we should not go to the zoning board or to the village board with the same plan. So I'm interested to continue exploring that conversation as he suggested.
I think that's right, and I think this period in which we gather public input is what makes an ultimate recommendation better. We're clearly hearing concern about elements of the plan, and individually, I've had an opportunity to speak with community members. It's very clear that there is paddle interest and demand. The numbers and the data support that. The second piece is we are learning about significant interest in pickle. We are testing that and learning that there is interest. I think there's an opportunity to understand that. Nationwide, it is gaining a lot of interest. But I would love to have additional user data to help validate that. More specifically, just thinking about being a neighbor, being a good neighbor. Most of us are lucky enough to live near parks, and we know, just like residents do, that their park, their neighborhood park is almost a personal park. You feel a connection to it. And many of the neighbors have lived near the paddle courts now for several years. People who've moved more recently moved understanding this is part of the facility. So I think there's an understanding that paddle is part of that location. And so expanding paddle is consistent perhaps with part of their experience. That there has been paddle, there is paddle. I don't know yet that we've heard that same level of interest and demand for pickle, and I'm interested in understanding how we can do that. All of that is to say, I think this is the right time to use the feedback of the zoning process to adjust, as Commissioner Kozlowskis said, adjust our plan to be, perhaps more in line with what we've heard, both from process as well as residents, and in preparation for the April village meeting. I think, is it appropriate to talk about specifics, or would we like to direct staff to give us some recommendations? Because I think each of us could comment on puts and takes, but we recognize that might become elaborate, and I want to also probably hear public comment if there is any to be had on this topic today.
Sure, so I'm not sure I understand your question.
So we could each talk about, I think it should be X courts and Y lighting and Z parking. There's a lot of variables in the elaborate plan.
Right.
Would you guide us to do that, or should we do some other activity in discussion?
I think at this point, if the consensus of the group is that we want to move forward with the village with a much smaller short-term plan, in terms of the larger plan, in terms of the issues that were raised by the zoning board, I think that's probably mostly a conversation for another day. I think it's important that we do have some of our consultants and some of our staff here. I think it's probably worthwhile for us to do a recap and ask some questions along those lines. But I suspect, my expectation is that the reconfiguration of any kind of West Park master plan, however it might be, is again going to be a longer process. So my thought was that if we're comfortable with staff's recommendation short-term, that we would indicate that, then open the comment to the public, then have a chance for us to ask the consultants and the staff some questions, maybe some of the things that you were wondering about as it related to the zoning hearing and other comments, and we'll sort of see where it goes from there, if that makes sense. But I think ultimately, a lot of these questions will probably take substantially more time to answer. For me personally, I'm very interested in not just the sound study, and Dr. Thunder, I love that name. Dr. Thunder is not here. But I think the last time we did a sound study, Steve, was probably 14, 15 years ago when we were considering the skate park. And so this is certainly new to me. And, one of the things that I heard was interesting was that people talk about different kinds of noise and talk about whether, in some cases, louder surrounding noise sometimes can be seen as a benefit, but then there's understanding about the village ordinance versus ambient noise. There are a lot of questions I have about sound. We're not going to get into those tonight, clearly. I think that's going to happen down the road. But I thought that if we as a group are comfortable with staff's recommendation, I thought that we would make a statement to that effect, and then we'd give the public an opportunity to comment, and then we'd have a chance to dig in a little bit further with some of the consultants, some of our staff, and some of the questions we may have having come out of the zoning meeting, if that makes sense.
Do we have staff recommendations?
Do you want to reiterate that, Steve?
Well, Steve just made the staff
Yeah,
recommendation.
I know, but it would help me
Yeah.
to
Can you
hear it one
restate
more
the-
time.
Sure.
Yes.
So the recommendation is to ultimately revise the plan to remove pickleball completely, remove the related lights for pickleball, remove the 2 additional northern courts for platform tennis, and move forward with an application that has the 2 southern paddle tennis courts, the expansion of the paddle hut, and the decking that would be needed to connect the hut to the new courts.
And to clarify, there would be no need in the short term to relocate the playground. That would also be
Correct.
another
It can
topic
stay
that
as
would be
is.
considered for another day, if you will.
Correct.
So with Tom here too, with his diagram, thank you. You're referring to the shaded area, if you could indicate for those in the room.
Just that area.
That area and then the expansion.
Which is,
The HUD expansion, and then these, most.
The additional
places-
parking.
Places that were under where those courts are now. So it will still be a net loss of 4 spaces. Some of them are here, but also there's some handicap spaces that are necessary to meet the current ADA code, so that's part of why we had a loss of spaces. But then, yeah, anything up here would just look kind of like that.
Well, sort
There
of.
you go. Right, yeah.
Look at that, it's amazing. It's engineering right there.
Where are the neighboring homes in relation to those southern?
The far right.
So here's the closest homes. So these
Okay.
courts here,
Line up.
this is the same distance to those.
Okay, okay.
so today the playground is right there
Uh,
on like
about
the middle courts.
130.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is that 178, it says?
76.
Yeah.
Yeah, 130 was as we were taking sections of it all down. Alternate options. 176 from the property line to the east edge of the.
But again, no closer than existing paddle courts. Great, okay, great. Other comments? Lindsay?
I'm not quite ready, I'm sorry.
Sure,
I will be in
that's
just a
fine.
sec. Okay.
It seems to me to make sense to, we know that there is a definite demand for additional paddle. Many of the concerns had to do with the lights and the noise of pickleball and adding, it seems to me that this is a way to, it does make sense to slow the process down because I think I agree. I mean, I think we had a recommendation for the West Part master plan, but we really didn't have a chance to go through it in detail or discuss it at the board level, so that I would, yes, it would make sense to scale back and to just approach it with meeting the actual need that we have, which seems to be paddleable.
And with respect to paddle, there was never an intent to build 4 courts this year. So it's really just addressing what we had hoped to accomplish this year. I don't think there's an intent to build the hut expansion this year. It's just to do the engineering work and architectural work so that we'd be prepared to do it in the following year. Because there's a fair amount of much greater lead time for a structure
Correct.
than there is for a court.
Correct.
For example. Okay.
Can you
And on the
operate
drawings, they're located, they're noted as 2023.
Right, this is still the
Right,
drawing that was
so-
submitted to the ECB.
Right.
So this is just, that would obviously be revised.
Sure.
I guess my only other option, though, is that if we are building those 2 additional huts for this year and then not 2 additional
Courts.
platform courts this year, not expanding the hut, I mean, could we, or could there be is there absolutely a need to, will we be violating a fire code if we don't expand the hut?
I think we're going to have to ask about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask one other question? Did I just lose it? I heard a couple of different things, that we'd be splitting our proposal or that we'd be modifying the proposal. So procedurally, sorry, I always have the procedure questions.
Sure.
What happens to the other pieces of the proposal if we move forward with just platform tennis and hut?
And I think, again, that's a question for the village. They could, I imagine they could choose to look at the plan as what we're discussing now is the complete plan, and then we would start over any sort of an additional plan down the road. In theory, they could say that they're remanding the rest of it back to the zoning board, but then we'd have to agree to a specific date for the zoning board, which I personally don't feel is in anybody's best interest right now. So my guess is that and again, Patrick, you can probably correct me, but sometimes they talk about remanding to a date certain to avoid another notice requirement, which we wouldn't be concerned about. So they might leave it out there hanging, so to speak, without a date certain that would require another notice, or they could just say that they want us to consider this to be the complete plan for this application, and we would need to file another application in the future. Would that be your understanding based on your experience, Patrick?
So, yes and no. I think they're going to, the cleanest way for them to handle this is to say that these 2 courts and the expansion of the building are what we're considering today, done.
Right.
And if we want to do anything else there, we have to reapply. That's the cleanest way to do it.
And that would make sense to me as well.
Yeah, it's because if you leave something hanging, as you call it, there's an expiration date on anything similar to, like, there's an expiration date on permits. And so therefore, as you expressed, we'd kind of be under the gun then to come back to them with something. And that doesn't seem to be the direction that we as a board want to take with the remainder of the ideas that have been floating around for West Park and any further improvements at West Park.
So again, I think it's the village's call, but I would agree with
Yeah.
you. That would seem to be the cleanest way to handle it.
Yeah.
I don't think we would want to say we were leaving any of this hanging. I think it's been, I think
I think
it's
that's a
been
good point.
abundantly clear that this plan as it was pitched is not liked, acceptable, it wasn't the right plan, right? So I don't want to put, I would prefer we could lead the board to say, we don't want to leave it hanging. We don't want to remand it back. If this is we have scaled it back, we have removed all except
Yeah.
this, if that's what staff wants, if you say there's the demand, which, I believe you've told us this for a couple of years now, then, but I would be very clear that the rest of this plan is going back to the drawing board.
But
It's
that's-
not coming back in another year, or that's not the same grid, the same blueprint isn't coming back, that we're going to start afresh with more information, right?
That makes sense to me.
That's the way that you present this. When we step in front of the village board, we are changing the plan to this request. And that makes their decision a little bit easier as well, as far as clean, like I was saying, it's a clean cut. Because when you have the negative recommendation from the zoning board, whether it's 4-3 or 7-0, if you take that plan to the village board, you have to show why, the zoning board was wrong. And then if you wanted to have some leeway with them in your presentation, you have to kind of leave it open, but we'd be willing to modify this plan at your direction. But that then leaves it open for the village board to say, well, we think that these changes should be made if you're willing to make them. And then they could say at that point, go back to the zoning board. Let's let the zoning board then, raise all the questions and ferret out some more information so that we don't have to spend the time in the village board to do that. So the easiest way for all involved, I think, is to just go to them and say, look, we have this meeting with you. This was our initial plan. We are responding to the feedback that we received from the zoning board and that we want to just focus on this component of the whole plan. And we would hope that you would recommend us, granting us the relief that we are requesting in order to just build these 2 courts and expand the hut. That's the easiest way, and like I say, the cleanest way for everybody to handle this, so.
Makes sense to me.
So if we're just weighing in on the 2 additional paddle courts and the hut, just a couple of thoughts. As you know, obviously we all received a lot of feedback after we voted in December on the plan, and many concerns were voiced by both neighbors, but also by residents. We also heard very loud and clear from our residents who are involved in paddle and platform tennis. And we've just, I think, heard from them and have seen that paddle has been a great addition to our community. And that the additions then, just 2 courts, I think I see that as a limited addition, and also that it's for an existing, part of an existing use and purpose already at West Park. And the hut, also understand why that would fit with the number of courts. So I would be comfortable with move forward with that piece at this time.
Okay. So I think I'm hearing from everyone that we're comfortable with this plan.
With the
The
modification.
modification to, as was shown, to go to the village board requesting special use and any variation to construct the 2 southernmost courts, the hut expansion, and the, looks like 12 parking spaces, give or take, to the west to basically replace the spaces that are lost below the 2 courts. Great.
That seems to recap it. And so, Steve, take us through the process from here. So you and Tom will review a new drawing,
So, yeah, Walt Hamilton will design a new drawing that encapsulates this, removes everything else, and I will begin discussions with the board on the mechanics and the procedures of how to go about this.
And communicate with village staff as well.
Did I say board? I meant
Yes,
village staff.
Right.
Yes.
Very good. All right.
Is this where we can clarify things? Or, just real quick,
no.
before we go to public, Tom,
Yeah.
what's underneath the parking spaces that you have to create currently? The 12 extra ones?
That's part of the right-of-way currently, isn't it?
This one's in the West Park right away, and this is your monument sign that says welcome to West Park Maintenance. So that would get moved probably in a year. There's 1 tree, I draw this right here, but this is one of the spruces that was kind of fading because of the shade of the other trees. And so the other stalls used to be right here. So this is
They didn't go past the hut.
They went to the, just to the.
Right
hut,
to about there,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so,
Right,
right.
that
Yes.
court is over asphalt, this
this
eastern
one's
court,
Right.
yeah.
Correct.
This is over the, right.
Just some
Over.
bushes and grass, yeah.
Yep, okay. All right,
But the corner of that court that you were just touching, sorry, the east court, isn't going to come to the playground or the little circle where the playground is
So the
today.
playground is all in this area.
So we don't need to touch the playground
No.
At this time,
indefinitely, because we
right.
were already accelerating the schedule by a couple of years, I
I
believe.
think it was a couple of years, something like that.
So we can
We might go-
let that follow its playground process when the time comes.
So recognizing between tonight and the village meeting, we have a short time period. When will this board see the drawing that indicates the courts are not, the pickle courts are not coming, the playground stays where it is? It seems like something the village would want to see.
But it'll be early this week.
It would be in the next, it would be in this
Yes.
interval before the village meeting. Okay, because I know as a member of this board, would feel more comfortable when the village sees it, that it reflects our understanding. So that's,
We were working on it today, but
no, fair enough, fair enough. That's kind of, if we could just kind of walk through at the highest level, what's going to happen between now and the village meeting? highest level, like drawings will be revised?
They're going to get the drawings, they'll get them to me, I will circulate them to all of you to confirm it reflects what you believe we're talking about. Once I get that consensus, or get all 7 members of the board, including Ellie, who couldn't be here tonight, in agreement with that, then I will communicate it to the village officially and see how their process is, churn it back to us.
And then whatever they share with you, you'll share back with us.
Yep.
Great.
That's great.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and open it to public comment, and then I have an opportunity for any of us to ask questions of staff or consultants following up from the other meeting. So is there anyone here who, Walter, I am so surprised. Could I just see a show of hands of who would like to address us tonight? So Walter, you're the only one? Oh, 2 people. Great. Okay, 3. Very good. Okay. So Walter, you're up first. State your name.
Okay. I appreciate that you're modifying it. That's wonderful. Thank you. My concern is nobody is talking about mitigation. These lights, you can put shields on them. This morning, I actually talked to a guy at Total Platform Tennis who built these and presumably is bidding on the current project, proposed project. He says, no problem, and there are places where they've done it. Park Ridge has done it. So that's something that can be done.
You're stealing my thunder. I think we're going to ask Tom about that in a few minutes.
Okay, but I mean, we want to make it clear why not? People are complaining, so that's easy to do, cost of peanuts. The other stuff is, that acoustic fence is another thing, which he also thinks is a wonderful thing. They've used a thing called black windscreen, but both of these are, you have to think about it. You can't do it later, because if you didn't build this fence strong enough, and the wind hits this stuff that's 8 to 10 feet high, you're going to rip down your fence. But to me, that's the kind of things you should be talking about here, even with these. To retrofit all of those with these shields on the lights. We talked about Caddyshack is turning the lights down from 5,000 degrees Kelvin to 3,500. You can do that here too. The only is LED lights are tremendously bright. They don't have to be that bright. It still was so much better than the original ones you had. But he says, no problem. It's just electronics to do that sort of stuff. So mitigation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gary Cole. I live at 732 Laramie, which is just across from West Park. I think the thing that has bothered me about this whole process, and then I didn't hear it tonight, and I haven't heard it in any of the previous discussions from the Park District side, is an interest in the Park District in preserving the park. There didn't seem to be any thought whatsoever about what was happening and what was in that original plan. And nobody, even despite then the objections of the neighbors, nobody reacted to that. Nobody went over and, I don't know, maybe you all did go over and look at the park, but nobody thought about what's going to happen to the neighborhood, what's going to happen to that little peaceful piece of space that we had there that we call our park in West Park. And frankly, I think the neighborhood then thought, the Park District doesn't really care about the neighbors. Right from the beginning, there was a feeling that, well, we're going to do this, and you're going to accept it, and we're going to slam it through, and too bad. I don't speak for the neighborhood, I just speak for myself. I don't know what they'll think of this amended plan. Maybe it'll be fine, maybe not, I don't know. We'll have to see what people think. But I'd like to know, what assurance does the neighborhood have that this isn't just step one? Well, we can't get the whole deal, so let's take a little bit, and then next year we'll come back and get some more, and then the year after that, we'll get the rest of what we want. But we're going to get West Park. We're going to turn that into a sports complex. It's not going to be a park anymore. So I'd like to hear the board make some kind of a commitment that this is, if the neighborhood says yes, if the park says they want to do it, and the trustees say this is it, then somebody would say, okay, this is it with West Park. We're going to let there be some green space there. We're not going to take what's left and turn it into a facility. So I think the zoning board is to be commended. I think they did a good job. I think the original plan was, I called it ludicrous at times. I thought it was foolish. And I'm glad to see that the park is going to remain, that the playground is going to remain. And by the way, I was at the playground today with my grandson. There's not really a big need to spend a lot of money replacing playground equipment. It functions very well as a park. They could use a few more benches maybe or something, a few more places to sit. But the park works. As small as it is, it works. So thank you for your attention, and I hope you'll keep us in mind as you move forward with this.
Thanks for your feedback, Gary.
I'm going to start timing myself. If you could let me know what kind of a time limit you're going to hold me to?
Well, generally it's 3 minutes, but let's see how we do, and you and I can continue the conversation.
Okay, as everyone knows, my name is Patrick O'Gara. I live at 740 Laramie Avenue. First, before anyone votes tonight, I hope you will address my submission of my April 6th, 2022 letter to the zoning board, which I sent to each of you on Friday after West Park was added to the agenda. So I hope before you vote tonight that each of you will acknowledge that you received and read my letter. As that letter reflects, there is no way to rescue any part of this application from being illegal and discriminatory. It started with a failure to notice the apartment building, and there is nothing you can do to rescue this from being criminal. Discrimination. It's a process of park destruction that began with a conscious decision to not notify the 38 rental apartment units facing West Park. And there is nothing you can do taking this application forward that will absolve the Park District of that abomination. Secondly, the Park District has consciously chosen to direct its sound expert not to measure the paddle tennis courts at full use or in the evening. There's nothing you can do now to rescue the fact that the Park District has manipulated the sound study in order to avoid addressing the issue of the disturbance and legality of the existing courts, let alone the proposed additional courts, which Dr. Thunder's study did not address at all at the direction of the Park District, which he acknowledged at the zoning hearing. If you think there is anything you can do to rescue this application, you were at a different hearing than I was. You have to stop this. There is no way you can take this forward without exposing the Park District and the village to significant liability here. For those of you that are attorneys or former practicing attorneys, you know this and you saw that in my letter. So please stop. There's nothing you can do here to rescue this abomination of a process. It was corrupt, it was wrong from the jump, including by voting before, as Commissioner Kozlowskis acknowledged, before the process of community outreach had even begun. You can never change that about this application, that this is where it started, with Board President Murdoch explaining falsely on video that the vote was being taken for the purpose of obtaining zoning presumptions, when the whole point of that process is that you get the presumptions when the vote is taken after the community outreach and the neighbors meeting, not before. You can never absolve that. That was a misrepresentation to this board. Please look at the meeting video from December 13th, 2021, where you will see that false statement by the board president that to get those very significant presumptions of zoning, of safety and health, that the board needed to vote that day, when in fact the presumptions procedure requires the vote to happen and the decision to proceed to happen after the letter is sent and the community outreach is had. The letter was dated December 22nd, 2021. The vote was taken on December 13th. You were all misled, grossly, and it has been an atrocity what has been done in the last 3 months as we have been pleading with you to stop. The only right decision tonight is to withdraw this application and start over, as was made very clear by the zoning board. This isn't about a modification that can fix this. There is nothing that can be done to fix this application. You need to stop, you need to withdraw. But again, whatever you vote to do tonight, please, I implore you to acknowledge my letter before you vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Steve, just a couple of brief questions. You did discuss, we did decide to forego the presumptions, but you had conversations with the village. What was the feedback you received from the village, whether we were eligible for those presumptions or not?
Yeah, the discussion with village staff members and was that they agreed that we qualified for the presumptions in their opinion, but we chose to forego them mainly because of the concerns raised by Mr. O'Gara.
Okay. And from a practical standpoint, we did in fact take a vote to allocate funds for the West Park plan after the, excuse me, Patrick. Patrick, please do not interrupt the meeting.
That was a lie.
Is that correct that we voted to allocate funds for the West Park master
This
plan?
board needs to hear from the village attorney. Talk to the village attorney.
Patrick,
That was
please
a
do
lie.
not interrupt. So to finish up again, that after we had the hearing, we did in fact vote to allocate the funds for the West Park plan as a part of our budget process. Correct. Is that correct? Great. Thank you.
When was that vote?
That was
The January
the
board
January board meeting after the meeting at West Park in early January. Great. Just
The
a
question of the presumption.
Patrick.
Put to a vote of the zoning board. and you know that. That is a lie.
Patrick, we gave you an opportunity to speak. Please do not interrupt our meeting. Please do not interrupt.
Lie. I
Please do
have
not interrupt our
emails
meeting.
From the village attorney stating that's a lie.
Patrick, you need to stop. I'll have to have someone ask you to leave, which I don't want to do. Okay? Enough. Thank you.
Enough from you. Take this
Patrick.
man off this board.
Patrick, enough. All right. I think as we had discussed, at this point, want to give an opportunity for any of us to ask any questions of our staff, of any of our consultants with respect to any of the information that came up.
Just a quick question, do we want to complete public comment, or should we?
I believe public comment is
okay.
completed.
Had we heard
I had
from
asked there were only
everybody?
3 people who indicated
Thank
they
you.
wanted to speak. Is there anyone else who would like to address us this evening? Great, that was my understanding. So, yeah, public comment and recognition of visitors is complete.
Can I ask, so as we go into asking the consultant some questions, give us some kind of feedback and a little more understanding, in particular about the request that we made, what was the zoning relief that we requested? I know there were a number of
I have that here. I'm
Yeah.
happy to.
So
pull that
I know
out.
it was expansion of use.
Right.
It was height of some of the light
I'll read
stanchions.
that for you,
Yeah.
just, and obviously, this would change.
No,
with-
yeah, I fully understand that, but
So I'll go ahead and read it for you. There was, the application was a request to expand an existing special use park/playground, a special use to expand an existing special use recreation center, a special use for new lighting at an outdoor recreation facility, a 13.5-foot accessory structure height variation for the paddle hut, a 1-foot accessory structure height variation for the paddle tennis court fence, a 32-foot light pole height variation for the pickleball court lighting, a 6-foot light pole height variation for the paddle tennis lighting, a 5-foot front yard parking space setback variation, and a 17-space parking variation, and a variation from the requirement that accessory structures not have a basement to permit the construction of the 8 pickleball courts, the warming hut, the 4 lighted paddle courts. That's what was presented to the zoning committee.
so when we did not ask for a variation of sound or light from code.
Yeah, that's correct. So with respect to lighting, and again, I think that's one of the
Yeah,
reasons why Tom is here, so we can ask some of these questions, but the village defines accepts that every property owner has a right to project a certain amount of light onto a neighboring property. It's defined as, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, a half-foot candle at the property line or a half lumen. I think the two terms are similar. And I believe all of our plans showed that there would be no light, 0-foot candles at the property line.
Right.
But that's the amount of light that actually falls on an adjacent property. There was a lot of talk at the zoning board about looking across a field and seeing a light. Now, to my understanding, and Tom, I hope you can speak to it, there's no way that the village quantifies that, and there's no amount of light that you see in the distance that's deemed acceptable or unacceptable. It seemed that the zoning board was talking a lot about this notion that someone could look across a field and see a light, and whether that they would feel an impact of that. I was going to go back and watch the full proceedings again this weekend. I wasn't able to do so, but I do remember that I think one person had said that they thought that kind of walking between Laramie and the hut that they could read something, a piece of paper that they were holding, and they thought that that was from the light from the paddle courts, the existing paddle courts. But it's my understanding that, you know, there are street lights and other sources of light that our lighting couldn't produce that kind of light. But again, you can clarify that as well. We'll talk about sound in a minute, but let's start talking about light.
Well, yeah, I wanted to focus on, I understand you're going to clarify some of these details about some of the more controversial statements that were made by public and by the zoning board. But I wanted to be clear that, you know, what our requests for relief were, because that's really the crux of what the zoning board was supposed to make their decision based on. I'm not saying that our plan is, you know, 100% right. I'm just saying that as the former chairman of that board, nobody took leadership on that board to make people focus on what their deciding factors were supposed to be. And I thought things went a little astray when some emotions were heightened and words were actually put into a couple of the consultants' mouths and then thrown back at them when the zoning board had their opportunity to share their opinions on it.
So, and actually, let me make one comment about sound, because Dr. Thunder is not here. I don't believe you feel comfortable speaking much to sound issues. I'll be honest with you, the topic confuses me a little bit when, you know, apparently there were measurements made that exceed the village levels and the relationship between background noise or ambient noise. And so I think one of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing is, now that we do in fact have this study, bringing him back so that we can ask questions and understand the impact. And I think, to your point, Patrick, at one point there was a comment about the appropriate distance from a paddle court to a house without sound mitigation. Pickle, thank you. Without mitigation, and then that was sort of converted to the same with mitigation. So there was some confusion about that, I would agree. But I don't think, I assume you're not going to speak to sound. That's not your area.
All I could do is read from his report, so.
Fair enough, fair enough. So any questions about lighting or parking that people are
Could
curious
you
about?
explain, so one of the things that I think is important about, and just for the sake of considering the plan that was presented, when I first heard that we had to have lights 50 feet in the air, or whatever, I thought that was incredibly out of line. Could you explain why?
Sure. Okay, there's two things that you're able to achieve with taller lights. When you are able to bring the lights up, this is again from my education working through Musco and other electrical engineers, so it's not sort of my direct education as a civil. But when you bring the lights up to the full height, you end up with a much more focused and even light on the athletic surface. So here, right at the pickleball courts. If you were to bring those lights down, and again, the paddle is a completely different system, but there are older tennis courts done elsewhere with like parking lot lights. And you end up with more spill because your beams of each light are spread more.
In order to cover more space.
In order to cover more ground from a lower elevation. So from a higher spot, that beam covers those courts more efficiently and uniformly. For an athletic use, that's why football, baseball, all of them have as high elevated towers as possible so that they're illuminating that space. My gesticulation is going to get in trouble here.
It's okay, I get in trouble with it a lot.
But
Not yours,
the
but
reason for, yeah, right.
That's the main rationale. Plus, you're able to achieve the cutoff that is code required at a zero. If we were to bring those lights down to a 30 or a 20, 25 is probably as low as that, you can illuminate the 8 courts and achieve the uniformity that's required. That's not required by Wilmette, but by like the Athletic Association for pickleball. You wouldn't achieve the half-foot candle at the property line because those lights would be more spread out. So by bringing the lights up, they're shining more direct down. Think of it as sort of a focus beam, but one that's centered just on those 8 courts.
So like a cone.
A little bit more controlled.
Yeah.
And you saw the fixtures that David Miller showed. That light is back in, so it's got this light and this
Right,
like
it's set back in a
cone of
hood.
shame on my dog's head, or right?
Yeah.
Got the idea. So.
And that he was saying that there's mirrors in there or reflective surfaces in
Correct.
there.
There's just to
that then-
control that beam.
Right,
down.
control it down. So the light is set back in that fixture. When we talk about the paddle lights, Walter brought up the question about shielding, and it was brought up in a meeting, or I believe in a meeting, and then I recall asking Steve, I think, about it but it just in a side conversation. The paddle lights were initially shielded when they were first constructed, right?
Not when first constructed, but eventually shields were added to prior fixtures.
But then when they changed the fixtures because we went to a different light bulb, the shields were taken off because it was a whole nother fixture that was put on.
Correct.
And then we've just moved on, we've just kind of continued forward without shielding around those lights. So the possibility of shielding all these lights that currently exist and the future lighting for paddle could be achieved pretty easily, right?
Absolutely.
All right, shielding of the lights, what does that do to the light spill?
So if you recall the ladies, one of the residents showed a picture up here of the lights that you see around the outside. You'll end up with a little less of that halo effect. But paddle courts themselves, separate from pickle, are an elevated platform. So that light is hitting a surface that's up at chest height for those of us around the outside. You'll end up with a little bit more spill, and that's why we don't have them next to a property line. But the shields will make the lights themselves much less visible. That's the key component. So when you're looking at them from Lake or from Laramie or from even in the park, you'll see that the courts are illuminated, but you won't see the luminaires themselves. So the fixtures that were reused have cutoff, which means that they're still controlled, but they don't have a shield around the actual luminaire. So that's what we would anticipate to include in the next update.
So what it does really is not necessarily control the spill.
Correct.
But it just
changes
controls.
that you can't see the luminaire itself.
So from a distance, it may not look as bright.
Correct.
But on the court, it's still.
It's still the same. So it won't affect the court lighting.
We have a lot of lights on the courts right now. Why do we have so many lights around each court?
That's more of a paddle-specific lighting program. They all come packaged within each of those cages. Probably the wrong term,
But each court
has its own lights.
Because you don't want light spill or can't have light spill from one court to the other? Is that kind of?
I attribute it more to how paddle is lit compared to how tennis and pickle are lit like tennis. Tennis court lights are handled differently than paddle lights. So just a different system.
Damn these companies trying to make more money.
Probably.
So can I jump in on
Yeah, absolutely.
some light questions? So if we were to add the shields to the existing and potential additional paddle courts, there wouldn't be any impact on play, and it could potentially minimize some of the brightness.
Some of the visibility from a distance of those luminaires themselves, right? You'd still notice that the courts are lit, but you wouldn't see the lights as much. You'd still have that halo of light look, right?
So is it just a cost factor? I'm assuming it's not outrageously expensive to add shields to lights.
No.
Okay. And then can you also speak to the type of light? And I think that was mentioned as well in some communication.
What Walter was asking about?
Yes.
Okay.
How that
I'll
would-
investigate that. I'm not certain about how to manipulate the wavelength of the LED luminaires.
Specifically, I'd like to know how that would impact play and visibility on the court, as well as brightness outside
Understood.
of, as well as cost.
And I think it'd also be helpful to know the lights that were replaced, how do they differ from the lights that we have now? In terms of brightness and in
Yep.
terms of efficiency. And, I mean, obviously, that was perceived as an upgrade because of cost or because of, brightness or whatever.
And I think that's a good question. We know that along this process, we've received feedback on lights of the existing, timing of play of the existing, sound of the existing. And I think even while I hear general agreement that it makes sense to reduce the scope of the overall proposal to just 2 courts for paddle and just a hut expansion, I think it also, we can do both. We can do that limited increase, and we can also continue to evaluate light, sound, et cetera. So should we agree that it makes sense to do simply 2 paddle courts and simply a hut expansion, we can also continue to reduce or review lighting, sound, et cetera. So I want to just be really explicit in a decision to consider something on the front part does not mean we do not also consider lighting, sound.
Can I ask another question about the lighting? So, one of the comments or conversations that was had about the lights for pickle was that they were dark sky compliant. And this is something that I think we as a park district, because we illuminate a lot outdoors in different areas, is something that we need to be cognizant of as we move forward with new lighting. Do you know the qualification for dark sky? By a little bit. So my question may not be able to be answered right now.
I also was on a zoning board, and now I'm on a board that our village is dark sky enforcement. But
Yeah.
So is almost every community in Northern
Everybody's trying to
Illinois.
focus on it, yeah.
They're all pushing it, and the general gist is that all of your light fixtures face down.
Yep.
With the main thing that you're trying to avoid is the halo effect of lights being shown up at landscaping or up at facades of the facilities or structures, which have the potential to really create a light halo up and above. So even the very bright paddle lights are dark sky compliant because they're all shining down. So they're not creating any effect that is up, right? All of the light added is being added direct, and it's being controlled into its area.
Can you confirm that? And maybe, my thought about it is that maybe with the shielding, it
probably becomes a lot better. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the cutoff fixtures are considered dark sky compliant, but we'll evaluate that.
All right, thank you.
To jump back to Julia's comment, because I absolutely agree. As soon as we started hearing concerns about the plan, I know I wasn't the only one that had conversations with staff and with others to say, how can we be better neighbors even now? And whether it's putting up a sign to ask our paddle players to be respectful of neighbors and sound or other things, I think we would appreciate any additional recommendations from staff on how we can continue to preserve, the park and the space and have limited disruption and be the good neighbors that we've been talking about. So I appreciate you raising that, Julia.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I was going to say the same, and just to add one more detail, I think exactly as Julia explained it, we can, in addition, improve our efforts to be a good neighbor by this shielding. Sounds like something that's, if we proceed with any construction at all, while we're at it, to address those shields. And I would also ask that we revisit the wiring. We've heard from the public that there have been mistakes and timer issues, and perhaps, just broken systems. There's been several reasons why the lights have been on at the wrong hours that were not intended. And so we could use this opportunity while there's workers on site, right, to correct the electrical. Even if it requires a bit of an investment, I think that would be well served to make sure that there's whatever the timer type system is, that it would ensure a cutoff at the stop time and would prevent because the reality is maybe every court isn't used every night, so any court that's not in use could default to off. Like I've shared with you, Steve, as like tennis courts that I play on outdoors, the burden's on me as the player to keep hitting that button every 30 minutes. And sometimes it might go off in the middle of a point, but if you're smart, you learn to hit it every time you change sides to keep it from doing that to you. But something that would ensure that a court not in use wouldn't provide any additional light pollution. That seems like a quick win. That I would certainly support the cost of that.
And also so lights don't go back on in the morning if they were left in
Absolutely,
the on
exactly.
position. Right, sure.
There's surely technology that can address that,
Right,
and it
yes,
sounds
for
like
sure.
it's inconsistent from court to court because of the additions up until this point. So let's take this opportunity to make sure that everything is on the same system that could be helpful in that way.
And this was something I believe a resident came up and asked a question about the lighting, and you had answered the question that there was kind of a redundancy or a duplication, and that's why when the timer goes on at 7 or 8, those lights sometimes go on because they weren't turned off before, but you're going to fix that.
Correct.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's blowers there that dry the course. Is that what they are? Dryers? And those are on a timer. Is there a restriction within the paddle, rules of construction or whatever it is about the lights being on a timer too? Or, because like you're saying, every half hour the lights go off on a tennis court. I mean, do we say the lights can't be on for more than 2 hours or an hour? Someone's got to turn a switch back on. It's something to be
There's no law against it.
Well, no, but I mean, is there a rule, like the paddle community, hey, the courts have to face this direction? All right, well, I mean, is there like a little innuendo about lighting or something like that?
I don't know, we can ask our staff member here.
I guess my other question now may have to do what has been brought up in is landscaping and whether that could be utilized for some of the issues that raised have been sound, and whether landscaping could be utilized to act as sound reduction or light reduction.
Absolutely.
So, I asked Dr. Thunder about that prior to the meeting. If we were to put, 10-foot tall arborvitae, all along either the side of the fencing that would be by the pickle, or if we put it all along the property line, something like that, does that add any value to the reduction of the noise? And his comment, and he addressed it during his presentation, it was not about the arborvitae actually absorbing any additional sound. It's that the height of the arborvitae would help, but above that, sound still travels. So it was so if you had a 10-foot fence at the pickleball courts and you had 10-foot arborvitae at the property line, it wouldn't add a significant noise reduction because the sound travels above the 10 feet.
Yes, but I guess I'm saying perhaps, instead of a physical sound barrier, making it a plant sound barrier might be more acceptable to people, residents.
Again, I think we're going to want to talk to Dr. Thunder a little bit more at some point. Sure.
And if that tree that you circled needs to go, you can find another spot. I think as a board, we've made a commitment to always replant trees.
Yes, absolutely.
So could you clarify, I know we haven't seen the drawing of what this will look like as modified, but it looks like we're taking out a little bit of green space, a tiny bit of green space with the parking, but is that the only green space?
Here, this is existing green. Okay, then there's a little bit of green between the existing parking and the court number 2 here.
Like 6 feet?
And then there's
Planter.
this.
Right, that whole berm.
This is
there.
actually a drop-off lane, and then there's the entrance sign, but then it's just an expansion of it.
Right, there's a whole berm.
That's within the right-of-way here on the left, and then Bridge is the right-of-way here.
I think it could be helpful to just understand that space, but also are there other areas where we could add in, invest in, whether it's a couple more trees, whether it's some planters along the decking
Absolutely.
to bring in some green space. I think it would be helpful to understand how we could offset some of the green space that we're taking away.
Thank you.
Other questions about lighting? I know I have a couple of questions about parking.
Yeah, so do I. Yeah, I was ready to go there.
Go for it. Excuse me, sorry about that.
So during the presentation to the zoning board, it really wasn't clear how many parking spaces are at West Park.
So the existing West Park has 115 stalls. That's a combination of 110 or 111 standard spaces and 4 accessible. After this modification with the additional spaces here, the intent was to have 111 spaces, which would be 106 regular spaces and 5 accessible, which meets the actual correct number of accessible spaces for the number we have. That was your question, so I want to start with that.
Yeah. So the challenge that was presented was that some of the spaces are in Glenview, not in Wilmette. And so there's debate over whether those count as servicing the park.
Right.
Even though they were built at the same time as the spaces that are in Wilmette, as far as we know, right?
Maybe we should ask Steve to give a little bit of the history of the construction of those spaces, potential IGAs, et cetera.
Sure.
You give us a little bit of the history.
Sure. So when the Village of Wilmette and the Wilmette Park District entered into the intergovernmental agreement to allow the village to construct the, I think it's a sanitary, not a stormwater.
It is a sanitary tank,
underneath
correct.
West Park. One of the terms of the agreement was if the Park District were able to gain approval from ComEd to add parking spots on the western side of West Park Drive, that the village would pay for those if the permission was granted within 3 years of the signing of the intergovernmental agreement. And ultimately.
Permission from ComEd.
ComEd.
Because it's their right of way.
Because it's their property. And so, and we hold the lease from them. And so we gained that authorization. The Village of Wilmette built those spots, and somewhere down the road, it was realized that those were technically in Glenview, on ComEd property, but in Glenview, not within the Village of Wilmette proper.
So those spots were created to service the park.
Those spots were created specifically to serve the park, specifically because of the anticipated usage of, everything that's going on there.
Right, and yet there was debate about whether those spaces could be counted towards our use, despite our use is in West Park. Is that about right?
I don't know if there was necessarily debate. I think the Village of Wilmette staff feel that when it's outside of their jurisdiction, they can't include it for the formal request of a zoning variation. I think our point, and Tom maybe can speak to this better than I can, is the fact that they exist, they're right there, and they were built to serve the park, would be enough of background and reason for a zoning board to grant that variation.
That's where I was headed. So the zoning board, it really wasn't to my sight. I mean, I knew they were there. As I watched the presentation that we made, it never really was brought up that there's this 111 spaces on the site that service the park. It was really, focus was about the 12 space requests that we had. And I thought that was kind of missed by some of the zoning board members to realize that there's ample parking for the park, and that they should have taken that into consideration.
So just to drive the point home.
I'm sorry.
Excuse me, sir. 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 I'm sorry, you're interrupting our meeting at this point. You're interrupting our meeting at this point. Please refrain. We did give you an opportunity to speak before. We did give you an opportunity to speak before. We're now trying to get some information. So again, just to clarify, we're trying to get information from our consultant. Thank you. So when the calculations were made that we need a 17-space variation, that was determined by the village based on their codes and based on their parking requirements.
Correct.
And they did not include any of the spaces on the west side of the park that were originally built to be used in the park, but because for whatever reason they were built in Glenview, apparently was realized after the fact, those were not counted. So presumably if the village determined that we needed 17 additional spaces. The spaces on the west side, is that 45 or 55?
55.
55 spaces. It would seem to a layperson that would meet the requirement if they were included.
Correct.
That's
There we
all. Okay.
Just to clarify, though, with a smaller, if we are going to just the 2 paddleball courts, the issue of how many spaces there are really just isn't an issue any longer.
Well, it is because there's still a requirement. Did you mention it? You mentioned it, right? It's 4?
There would be a demand of 4 spaces to support the 2 new paddle courts, and I think there's an
Right.
amount based on square footage of the hut, so that'll get revised. But
So
instead
there
of
may
there being
still
a
be
demand
a-
of 57, it would be somewhere in the 40s.
So there may still be a variation, but it would be less than the 17 spaces currently, and it still would not take into account the 55 spaces that are adjacent to the park.
Right.
Thank you, thank you.
And thank you for clarifying my
Okay.
point that I was trying to make about not counting numerous spaces that service the park.
And along those lines, Steve, I think you and I had a private conversation at one point about how we might be able to include those spaces if we were to enter into some sort of an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Glenview, perhaps to maintain the spaces. Could you talk a little bit about that and about whether there were talks about intergovernmental agreements in the past?
Sure.
With respect to those spaces?
Sure. I, don't pretend to be a lawyer, but I do believe that the entire reluctance to include those in a formal count is who has actual authority and control over those spots, whether it's the Village of Wilmette or the Village of Glenview. And so that, I believe, could be remedied by way of an intergovernmental agreement. And I do know that in just a very informal conversation, when the Village of Wilmette realized that the spots were technically in Glenview, the thought was they were going to need to get an intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Glenview. When this conversation started around this zoning application, I asked if they ever achieved an intergovernmental agreement. It turns out they haven't.
Okay, but that's something that we could choose to pursue independently. Okay.
How much time would something like that take?
Intergovernmental agreements can take some time, or they can be pretty straightforward. It really depends on how far apart everyone is in the thought process.
But this would be with, because we already, as the Park District, we already have an agreement with ComEd.
Correct.
This would be with the Village of Glenview.
But ComEd would probably want to be a party of this because it's their property.
So the agreement we have with ComEd is a lease for that land that the Park District has, not the village has.
Correct.
And so I understand as owner, so that actually would be the point
Probably the
that
thing that slows you down.
slows it down the most, yeah, ComEd, yeah.
To clarify, Steve, you said they had not achieved it. Do you mean they didn't pursue it, or they attempted and they were rejected?
No one said they attempted it. So I am presuming they did not attempt to.
I think that's what you meant. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that's what we were talking about.
Other questions?
So, Tom, I'm looking at, with Google Earth, you can really fly over things pretty easily. I'm looking at that southeast court that I kept asking about. It appears to me that it's not even, it's not lawn space, it's landscaping. Is that a correct understanding, that it's truly landscaping that we're cutting into? We're not cutting into the, where you would be
It's
walking?
not grass and green space, correct? I think it's a combination of the two. So I think there's a grass space that connects patrons to the garden area, and then there's landscaping up against the existing paddle courts on the north side of it. So it probably splits some small grass space and some landscaping.
I had a question about the timing of the traffic study. I did hear during the meeting that some folks speculated about why counts weren't done last summer, because we aren't as familiar with traffic studies as probably you are. I assume that you generally don't do a study until you're evaluating a specific plan. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely
Okay.
not. Right.
So the fact that we hadn't formalized any sort of a plan until late last year would have made it difficult for us to do traffic counts in the summertime.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, is it possible to, is there data or are there ways to extrapolate seasonal use so So
That's how our report projected the
Okay.
use of the
So you did
existing
factor that
facilities.
in?
Correct. That is partially factored into how you would evaluate a parking or traffic demand. In the case of this particular variance, the variance was about the 17 spaces on the east side of West Park Road compared to the 57 demand. They're saying that there's 40 available to serve, right? So that calculation is a Village of Wilmette ordinance that calculates the number of spaces based on a use: baseball, soccer, and court sports, paddle hut. And again, maintenance has its own traffic. But so that 57 number isn't like a traffic engineer's calculation. It's a Village of Wilmette ordinance, and that ordinance changes throughout Illinois. But if we give you an example, that's why we have professionals that do just that, right?
So it's possible that if they determine you need 57 spaces, that sometime there might be 60 cars parked there or 20 cars parked there, whatever the case may be. But again, all of this analysis did not include the 55 spaces that were built for the benefit of the park, but can't be counted because they're in Glenview. And again, you've been to more of these zoning meetings that we have. Surrounding capacity, is that often factored into? Is every parking variation request equal? Or do you factor into other capacity or whatever the case may be?
As I mentioned just a moment ago, so what I would anticipate in our town in Hawthorne Woods, what we would expect to see for parking in Crystal Lake, or if we go the other way, and you head down into Evanston or Chicago, your expectations from the public for parking are much different. So the ordinances that reflect the parking requirements in that town coincide with it. So the further you get into the loop, I mean, it's one space per 10 tennis courts. No one expects to be able to find parking, right? Crystal Lake, everybody wants to have 3 parking spaces. And I'm not speaking on behalf of any direct knowledge there. I just know that you're expecting, and the ordinances are written, to have more parking in a more a rural environment versus a urban, suburban, and then deeply urban, right? So that's common in the industry. Same works for our retention codes. Changes town by town.
You know, the other thing to speak to is, a specific case that we had on the zoning board a couple years ago was for a dance school that went into the strip center that is to the south of the Panera in town. All right, there's really limited street parking there, and there's no on-site parking for that strip center. But we granted the relief from the parking variation that they requested because you had the train station parking within a half block. And at the times that the school was really going to be busy, after school, in the evenings, the train station parking wasn't going to be full, and so we granted the variance for the parking relief because within a reasonable distance, there was ample parking. So parking, besides village to city you look at more than just on-site, because if there's some additional parking that's available to the public, you can take it and count it into, if you choose to want that use in that space, you can make that recommendation to the village board, and the village board often takes that into consideration as well.
And the other thing we didn't talk much about, there's a group of spaces that are dedicated for Loyola students during school hours. Presumably, when school's in session during school hours, when those spaces are encumbered,
Right.
That's low impact use in the park, or lower than when on a Saturday. On a Saturday, for example, when there might be a soccer match
Right.
and a paddle match and a baseball game, those spaces are also available to us. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And do you remember how many? I don't remember how many spaces that was.
If I understand
12,
it right, I
15,
think it's
18,
13. I think
something
it's
like
13 permits are issued for that.
Okay.
But those would be during school hours, not for extracurricular events, so not for games or et cetera. And so then you would only really coincide with the daytime paddle uses and ancillary uses of the park, as opposed to the peak use of a weekend or an evening event. And then at that time, those permits aren't valid. They shouldn't be parking there.
But those spaces weren't counted at all against the 17 spaces.
Listed in the report that there's uses, but other than that, it's not counted against your variance.
Right, so those spaces didn't in any way mitigate the 17 as well.
Correct,
So as if those didn't exist, even though they would presumably be available during most of our high-demand periods.
Correct.
And could you explain something that Dan Brinkman had said that I mean, there were a couple of things that I was a little bit confused about. One was this talk about the seasonality of pickle, since that's not on the front burner right now. I'm not sure how relevant that is, but I assume he was referring more to pickle as it's played elsewhere in the country.
Sure.
I mean, again, I don't know, but I don't think it's played a lot in the wintertime, although I hear stories about other park districts shoveling their courts and whatnot.
Yes.
But paddle and pickle seem to be somewhat different seasons locally, is that right?
Yes, paddle has a longer season, but the courts we built in Buffalo Grove are shoveled by the pickleball players. They want to play on it as long as they can get out there without parkas.
But what I was really curious about was the scheduling notion. I think I think a number of the zoning board members, and I was certainly concerned or confused as well, this notion that we might have to really coordinate schedules. Could you talk a little bit about that? And again, was that assuming that there are really only 40 spaces available, not the Loyola spaces, not the 55 Glenview spaces? Given all the other parking around there, do you share that concern?
That's a concern was raised by the village's consultant. It was raised and outlined in Dan's report as well from our office. It's a common recommendation across all park districts and school districts that we would encourage good communication between programming and operations so that we don't end up with a baseball tournament, a soccer tournament, a paddle tournament, and a pickleball tournament all in the same day. That would be counterintuitive, or I guess it'd be logical, but programming all that into that space is fitting too many parking spaces and traffic access to Lake Avenue on the same day. So Dan talked about it at the zoning meeting about just managing the spaces, but the use, as we understand, at least that's come out through this conversation or development here, the paddle primary heavy parking uses are the evenings when they run their
Leagues.
Their leagues. So as the synthetic turf fields aren't lit, there's only an hour or two at the beginning of that operation in the peak summer that they can really overlap. So.
And just to jump in on that issue, and just from talking to staff, I know that our racket sports are, we're not just sort of acknowledging a need and demand, but really using data to inform and taking a really strategic approach. And that goes into not just the demand and the need and what went into shape this plan, but also how we manage. So at some point, would love to hear from staff as well, just about how we approach our racket playing residents and how we best serve them.
Thank you. Other questions? I have a couple of questions for Jason, if he's available as well. But Tom, thank you for answering all of our questions. This was very helpful.
I'll leave this up here in case Jason wants to draw on it.
Great. So I do have a few questions, but I want to open it up to others, give Jason a chance.
But yeah, since I mentioned it, Jason, can you
Right.
just talk a little bit about how you use data to serve and our residents and really identify demand and need?
Like noise data.
So the data, I'll start with the data, but I think I'll start maybe like on a sort of strategic macro view of it, that we have a responsibility and a real mission to deliver racket sports to the community for their lifespan, and that those needs can change over someone's life, and that's why having multiple racket sports that intersect and work together becomes really an important part of what we do. To do that, our heritage comes through tennis in Wilmette for sure. That's been here a long time. The paddle community has grown and become a really key part of the social background. And pickle's growing. We're nationwide for sure, and we'll see where that lands someday here. Bottom line is that we know more about what happens on our outdoor courts, for instance, than any community I know of. We know more about the peak times in paddle than anybody else I know, and it's really because we put in place mechanisms to be able to measure at least reserved usage in unmanned facilities. So where most, most clubs, most indoor clubs can tell you what their court usage is. We have some knowledge about what our court usage is in unmanned situations, which I think helps us get a really data-driven sense of what's going on out there, because there's 19 courts all over town in the case of tennis.
So how do you do that?
So we implemented a piece of software that's a booking software that is pretty, it's report friendly.
So this is tennis you're talking about?
This is tennis and outdoor tennis and paddle, and I mean, we'll be in indoor tennis soon.
Oh.
But it's a piece of booking software for the history of Wilmette as I know it. Residents had the ability to reserve an outdoor tennis court at no charge the day prior. At some point during COVID, I think when we realized there wasn't going to be anyone to answer the phone at the indoor club, but we were like, how's that work? And the answer was this piece of software that we really like. And then when we got comfortable with its booking capability and its reporting capability, we decided to move it into paddle. And so the natural next step will be indoor tennis.
Can I ask a question? And I apologize, Jason, that I didn't give you this question ahead of time. But in the zoning meeting, I know there was a question, or it was brought up that Votman and Hibbard, both of them, they made a comment about your report showed they were only programmed to 3 hours a day or something like this. My family is very familiar with your courts, as we are heavy outdoor players, and those are two of the most common courts my daughter plays at. And so I know as a user that the data doesn't always reflect walk-ins or other things, because from experience, those courts are not any more available than the others. But I know you also block chunks of your court through lessons and such. So can you speak to that comment that was brought up? Because that felt misleading when they were discussing it in the meeting, just as I was observing that go down.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly how that person broke out the 3 hours per day. I can get you the percent usage at any individual park. Votman, we do program enough that that's in the heart of the summer, that's well past 3 hours a day. And then the pickle usage at Hibbard is also sort of, because we have 3 outdoor courts lined for pickle, the 2 at Hibbard and the 1 at Maple, and those courts are also being booked for pickle. But in terms, I can't give you like a hard number right up.
But that 3 doesn't sound right to
But
you
the
either.
Votman number seemed really low to me. Hibbard is the least used because we don't program it for lessons much at all. A little bit of pickle.
So you can tell when someone's renting a court for pickle as opposed to tennis?
No.
Okay.
No, they just.
I thought that's kind of what you were saying there.
No, they just reserve the court.
Okay.
But it also doesn't reflect that if the court isn't reserved for that hour, because if my daughter wants to play with her friend on a moment's notice, they'll check where is there a green box on there, and they'll run over to that court. And if it's empty, they can jump on. So it doesn't always reflect that the court is sitting there empty if your court didn't show a reservation, because certainly then the next available option is for walk-ons, right? People can still
Correct.
hang their rackets and do the old process.
Correct. So the walk-on play is we don't staff
We
every
can't report
every
on that,
courts,
but-
and so we can't measure that.
Sure.
At this point, completely accurate.
So there is pickle being played. I was aware that those 3 courts were striped, the 2 at Hibbard and the 1 at Maple. I just pulled up the map. Somebody had talked about the beauty of pulling these up. As I just look at the picture, those tennis courts are far closer to neighboring houses than 40 feet. Is that correct?
At Hibbard,
It looks to
I
me
would
like
have
they're
to measure
adjacent,
it,
but
but
at any rate, have we heard any complaints about noise relating to pickle from folks close to Hibbard Park?
I have not.
And Steve, could you look into that for me as well? Because as I look at that, I mean, I think we've all decided that, if we end up sort of pursuing additional pickleball courts, we need more information about sound and noise and so much. But as I look here, I'm just struck at how close those courts are to neighboring houses. And that's currently going on. There's currently some level of pickle play, probably not as intensely as we might expect a dedicated court might be, but there's some. Okay.
I'm sorry for going down a rabbit trail. I realize that asking about tennis courts isn't outside of the scope right now, so I'm sorry
He's
about
here.
that. But we're talking about specifically, I think right now, the demand for paddle, and do we justify this expansion? So
Correct.
have we given you a chance to speak to that? Sorry, I realize we're starting to get into pickle
No,
territory.
no,
and we do wanna
absolutely. I
talk
went
about
off on
that
a
later.
tangent because
Yeah, no,
I heard him mention that.
I
So
started
thank
it
you
as
for
well.
rolling it back. What my specific question related to that was, we are talking about potentially 2 additional paddle tennis courts. What's your sense of how far that will go to address demand that we were not able to meet last year, demand this year, demand into the future? Is that, will that help?
2 additional courts will help, it will help lift the cap of the number of teams that we can place in men's league on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights. It will help lift the cap on women's teams on Monday nights. And it will help considerably with the general sense of court compression and players feeling like, hey, I have a membership here, but I can never get a court. So I think at least in those 3 places, those 2 courts, I mean, we'll be expanded into those courts with the members we have in hand, and then but it will help so much. It will help a ton lift the cap from the league so that we can grow that weekday evening paddle especially.
And can you talk about the residents right now, who, a little bit more specifically in numbers, who's not able to play? Do we have wait lists, or are they just turned away? How does that work?
That's multifaceted. So one, we have wait lists particularly in in a teaching situation. So in we have a number of groups that have wait lists. Monday nights, for instance, at 6 o'clock to 7 and 7 to 8. There's 2 primarily women's groups that we do always have a wait list there. We also sent. We told 70 people this year they couldn't play with us really because we just ran out of slots on teams. That would help mitigate that. And then there's also just sort of I've heard this, right? And I live here, right? So I would go to birthday parties, right? And I've heard, that there are people who just stop trying, stop knocking on our door because they just have heard through the grapevine, Wilmette doesn't have any more space. So I think that piece of that will also hurt us growth-wise in the future. So I think this expansion would go a long way to quelling that notion that we're unwilling to grow with the community.
Can you tell me about how many people are per court? I mean, so that with one building 2 courts, how many people that should probably permit to start playing?
Yeah, so just using if you just use the membership number we have right now, membership is just use 500 as probably 20 shy of that, but say 500 on 6 courts. So if you sort of break that out, that's another 120 people, 130 people.
Okay.
Maybe more.
But not necessarily that many more people will be able to join, but it would be able to free up space so that 500 plus some could then be serviced better. I mean, that's kind of the way that I would interpret that number, because what you gave is like a straight line extension, whereas really we're talking about trying to service some of the existing members by providing more opportunity to courts to play, because there's already a jam up to try and get court time just to practice or play socially. And yet there's then in the evenings when you have scheduled league play, this would allow a few more teams in leagues.
Correct, and that, yes. So yes, that's true. It also will open up some more time to teach new people who don't play, who they're sort of the once a week or not just. I mean,
right? Because if I've heard correctly, there's times that are blocked out because of lessons on like weekends when more people are available to play, but then they can't play because the courts are booked for lessons.
Right. And that's why we've chosen not to book any lessons on Sunday. We don't program Sunday
I see.
in deference to that
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, and I don't play paddle, I don't play pickle, I don't play tennis. This is all from some of our meetings and then hearing from residents who play and have asked questions about the process we're going through, so.
Jason, on a league night, how many, like, rounds do you start? Like, how many different matchups? Like, does league play start at 7 or 8? And how many matches happen on a league night? I'm doing the math right now, so we've got 2 courts, we've got 8 additional players, but per night, but how many matches are you starting
So
off?
I'll just run everybody through like the baseline of how a league match works. I don't know. That'd
be great.
Not, but it's a match is 4 courts, so 8 players. The matches start at 7, and typically meaning in 90-something% of the matches this season at every club in Chicago, the first 2 matches of a team match go on to 2 courts. So court 1 and 2 go on first, and then they play their match, they finish their match, and then on the same 2 courts, the rest of their teammates go after they're done. So the matches basically go sort of 7 to 9, 9 to 11.
And then that's across all the courts?
Correct. So we have 3 simultaneous matches going
So
on.
3 matches, yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I was going, okay.
So would the extra courts have more? Okay.
So then he's saying then 4 matches an evening as opposed to 3 matches an evening.
So maybe we're clearing 30 people-ish from your wait list. We're not clearing all 70 if they were all on the league wait list.
Well, you
Which
are
is-
because there's a home and away. So,
Okay, all right,
yeah,
that's
so the league actually, so we have 6 courts, we have 24 teams. Right, so presumably the league would grant us, and I can't speak to this because that's the league's to grant, but presumably with 8 courts, the league would grant us 32 teams.
So another 8 teams, potentially 80
That's
people.
another 12 per
100
roster.
people, okay, gotcha, okay.
But that's an interesting point about the matches are 7 to 9 and 9 to 11.
Yeah, I mean, the second fighting match just starts whenever it's done, so so that depends on the level, depends on the length of a match. It can flex.
That helps to understand.
Yeah, so there was talk about, potentially turning off the lights before 11 o'clock. Of all of the different facilities that play paddle, do you know how many of them have lights that stay on until 11 o'clock or later, and how many have lights that go off before 11 o'clock?
There are 2 clubs that go off at 10 o'clock. It's Michigan Shores and the Winter Club.
Full disclosure, I'm well aware of Michigan Shores, but yes. Okay.
Most other, the vast majority play until 11.
Okay. And how does that affect play then? So, for example.
So what happens if the lights go off?
Right, what happens?
So I had this happen this year. We were in a really very close match with another team, and it was 5-5 in a third set tiebreak, and it was 11 o'clock, and we never finished the match. We called it a tie because the lights went off, and then we weren't going to get 4 guys back together to play 2 points. It didn't make any sense. So the match just sort of ends, and then there has to be either a reschedule or.
And what impact do you imagine would have on the club if the lights had to go off some point before 11 o'clock in terms of who would play, who might not continue to play, who might look elsewhere? Can you give us any insight into that?
Yeah, so I can tell you that from a particular series level, and it's 10 or 11 and up, we push that 11 o'clock shut off pretty close regularly. I mean, where I personally had the lights shut off on my matches twice this year. I talked to a couple of captains.
And that's at 11 o'clock?
At 11, yeah.
Okay.
And, I've talked to a couple other captains this week. They all each came up with a number like 2 or 3 times the lights just like the match killed the match. And we're particularly one of the real strengths of our program is the spread of level that we have. We literally go from Series 1 to Series 31 with a pretty even application of players, and the core of which do all live in town here. So that that breadth of play would get really hurt by, particularly from maybe Series 10 up, but that is a third of the teams. There would be folks looking up
Why is
to do
that?
other things.
Why only a segment of that population?
The better matches last longer is what I'm hearing.
Better matches last long.
The stronger players play
Balls in play,
longer
the
time.
points just
So let's
last longer.
break the law for that reason.
I guess my other one question I have is, I've heard comments from people who play paddle, is they like the fact they can come home, they can have dinner, and then go play paddle. But so you mentioned that matches tend to be 7 to 9, then 9 to 11. Could that just be moved back an hour, so you have matches from 6 to 8 and 8 to 10? I mean, I know, people would like to go home and have change and have dinner, but I don't know, it just.
Given how limited court time sounds like.
I mean, sometimes
like an
it's
opportunity
like a want
to flex
versus
it.
a need, and if they need court time, and that's not gonna be available, we can't have two additional paddle courts because issues with lighting, a need, and they want it to go later, but a need maybe, it still needs to be earlier, and can that, I guess I'm also looking at my husband, myself, working, sometimes you just don't have a chance to go home and have dinner. You have to eat on the train coming home or just something like that. I mean, it's.
So I could say, I could speak to that in a couple of ways. One is that the league that sort of drives all this play does start matches at 7. That is sort of the start time, like throughout all of Chicagoland. So that would be we would be out of step with.
So you're not setting the time, the league?
The league is, yeah.
Okay, although you mentioned that Michigan Shores cuts off at 10 o'clock, so.
But they start at 7.
Okay.
Michigan Shores tries to start earlier. I know that Michigan Shores has lost a number of players because of it, and the history is, not that we need to get into the minutia, but Michigan Shores made a neighborhood covenant years and years ago when they acquired neighboring property. It has nothing to do with the village. My understanding is Westmoreland has no light cutoff whatsoever. I've got friends who play there at 1 and 2 in the morning.
Correct. The other to address the question, the other piece of it is that
Not
there's
175 feet from houses.
the other point is that there is people are traveling, say, from Glen Ellen or from the city. So so the 7 o'clock start time is partially driven by the traffic to get from work to the site. So, I mean, I've left work at 5 and made it to Midtown at on a bad day like 6:30, just getting there. Anyway, but the travel is the other piece of it, that all these matches are between clubs and spaces throughout Chicagoland.
Okay. Any other questions?
So, I'm sorry, so what, would there be anything that would preclude league play from starting at 6, aside from saying, oh, well, everybody else does this? I mean, is there programming that goes past 6 o'clock? Is there?
There's programming right up to the matches. So that would hem in, the 6 to 7, and some of that is also,
So the courts are.
The courts are in use already from 6 to 7, but that we could decide, we could choose not to program that, but that also is a little sensitive because of that Tuesday through Thursday it's really men's paddle, and we're trying to find ways to find after work time for women to play paddle.
For women to play paddle.
You're here.
I think that's terrific. Also, though, women could play other days than Monday, if there was space.
I've heard that feedback several times.
It turns out women don't hate a beer after they play either, we found out. It's amazing.
All right, any other questions?
No.
All right, thank you very much, Jason.
Thanks.
So from a practical standpoint, we talked a little bit at the start of the meeting about some modifications, but as things stand now, we have a plan that has come to the zoning board. It's been, they've made their recommendation, but it still stands that that's what's going to the village board unless I think someone here makes a motion to modify that plan and then we vote on it. I think from a practical standpoint, we did all talk about a potential consensus, but I think we need a formal motion to modify the plan and to vote on that tonight, so we can then have, and I think subject to, a review of the drawing that Steve and Tom will prepare, so that we can then actually take something to the village between now and their, I think it's the April 27th meeting, is that correct? So would someone like to make a motion to modify the plan that we have thus submitted?
I move to modify the plan that we have submitted.
I'll second.
By modify, we mean modify per what Steve has already recommended, yes?
Correct, so I will
As
go ahead and
discussed.
articulate that to remove any of the pickleball courts, anything as it relates to the playground, decking to attach the 9th and 10th huts, I guess. So the plan would be to include only 2 paddle courts to the south, and an expansion of the paddle hut to service the additional courts, parking to the west of the courts, and decking surrounding the addition. So that's what
And
was
Steve,
proposed.
after all of the discussion, as you originally presented the plan like 2 hours ago, that's still, nothing has changed from your thoughts?
Okay. So there's a motion, has there been a second?
Yeah, I second.
Okay, all right, could we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Duffy,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis,
Yes.
Commissioner Clark,
Yes.
Commissioner Goble,
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes,
Motion passes.
thank you. I
And
think you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, yes.
Mike, one thing, I meant to throw this in before public comment, but I will acknowledge to Patrick that I did receive the large packet that you submitted. I read it on Wednesday, which was April 6th, when it was forwarded to us by Steve the day before it went to the day it went to the zoning board. I read it in its entirety then, so thank you for resending it Friday. I had already read it, but I do acknowledge that. Thank you.
And I too received it and read it.
I have read it as well.
Yep. All right, I think it's 9:16. Why don't we take a 5-minute break and then we'll continue with the rest of the meeting. Thank you. I can't get my thing open, so I've been trying to get a drink. she's
All
actually.
right, I didn't take the bathroom break, so this can't go too much longer.
Open it? Do you need a break?
All right, we're on.
We're good to go.
I did, I already. Oh, thank you.
All right. All right, I can hear, we're back in session. Hopefully, we're broadcasting. Good stuff. All right, I will pick up the agenda where we left off at item 5.0, the standing committee reports, and begin with the Lakefront Committee.
Yes, the Lakefront Committee met on Monday, April 4th. We discussed a number of both unfinished business and some new business. With respect to unfinished business, we reviewed an update on the Langdon Shoreline Protection proposal from our consultant Smith Group. The group is proceeding with permitting, and we expect that process to last approximately 90 days, perhaps shorter, perhaps longer, but at which point we would be able to begin some of the revetment work. A variety of discussions have occurred over the last, say, 9 months, and this program is approaching the point in which we would be able to go to bid. Secondly, the Lakeview Center renovation, we had a verbal update from Superintendent Gwynn. A construction manager has been selected, Frederick Quinn Corporation. They have done a number of projects in the general area, including the Wilmette Library and interior renovation, Kenilworth, Sears School, District 35 in Glencoe, and a few others. They will manage the project as the GC, and we expect to have drawings ready for bid in coming days. The project itself would begin post-Labor Day, assuming a construction schedule that is at a moderate pace. Next, new business, consideration of surplus property ordinance. The committee reviewed a recommendation to dispose of surplus property by staff, and we will have a motion to bring before the board now. With that, I move to approve ordinance 2022-06, an ordinance authorizing the disposal of certain surplus property owned by the Wilmette Park District as recommended by the Lakefront Committee.
And a second? Great, thank you. Further discussion?
Just to note, these are some aquatic equipment, kayak, as well as an inflatable that have been deemed end of life, and so they will be moved to auction.
Great, roll call vote?
Commissioner Duffy.
No, I was going
I'm
to
sorry.
say, I believe
Forgive me.
the equipment has already been replaced, so it's not like that this is going to be sold, another thing.
It won't create a shortfall.
It won't create.
Thank you. Good note.
Thank you. Roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goble.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Ordinance is approved.
Great,
And the next committee meeting will be on May 2nd.
great.
Thank you.
Golf Operations Committee report?
Yeah, lots happening, and a really exciting time. The course has been open for just a few days. And so we look forward to reporting and hearing more about how that's going at our next meeting. We know that there had to have been a lot of adjustments for weather and snow and ice and rain. So the course opened just slightly later than we had anticipated, but always a moving target. So grateful that golfers are back out there during this gorgeous weather. I know, are going to cover a motion later.
I think we might bump that up while you're doing your report.
Okay, which did not go through the committee, but we did have a significant amount of opportunities to talk through that individually with staff. And then just the last thing that I'll mention, I know everybody's working really hard just on repairs and also to get the restaurant up and running. Do my committee members want to add anything? No? Okay.
Just to note, I know a lot of preseason work is underway.
Thank you.
And normally your next committee meeting would be next week, but you're thinking about pushing it 2 weeks, is that correct?
We have not settled, but I know that there are some conflicts with some travel. So we will be in touch soon about possibly rescheduling.
Just to go off on a tangent on the same subject, I think looking forward to our June meeting, I think it happens right after school lets out. I may have a conflict with that. I don't know if other folks may as well. So maybe prior to next meeting, we could talk about perhaps pushing that meeting up a week. Just something to think about.
You're talking about the board meeting.
The board meeting in June,
Okay.
correct. Maybe to the first Monday in June rather than the second. But I know that the bid didn't go through the golf committee, but Lindsay, why don't you talk, or maybe Steve could talk a little bit about the bid from Slayton Construction. And I know it's later in the agenda, but why don't we go ahead and handle it now because it relates to the golf course.
Go ahead, Steve.
Sure. So we have been working with the lawn and finalizing designs for the renovation of the grill room. As you remember, Woodhouse Tanucci, during the budgeting process, gave a concept, gave some price estimates, and it was agreed to put it into the budget. We liked the idea, but we did all state that we wanted to work with whoever was selected for food and beverage. That has been ongoing. The design has evolved, which in part drives this project and this bid being higher than the design that's in our budget, because the design in fact has changed. So the bid is for $236,587.76 from Slayton Construction, and they were the only bidder we received. Kind of in relation to something Commissioner Goebel was talking about in regard to the Lakeview Center. Unlike Lakeview Center, we did not hire a construction manager or GC because the number of trades here is small and we can manage that. I don't know if that contributed to having a single bidder or not, but it is definitely not an ideal situation, not what we're looking for. But at this point, to get the work done, to reject the bids, to do a new bid notification, hold the period open for the requirement per state statutes, we're looking at 2.5, 3 weeks out before we have another bid opening. So in the essence of time, it is staff's recommendation to approve this bid.
And there's no guarantee were we to go through that process, there would be another bidder. I mean, we went through our normal bid process and it turns out we only received one bid.
Correct. And we spoke with 3 different construction companies through the initiation of the process, and only one selected to bid.
And in terms of the cost, you did note that it came in higher than what was budgeted, not necessarily what was expected, because the scope did change since we went through our budgeting process. But are there other offsets in terms of other capital projects we're considering at the golf course that could make up, and could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so the staff at West Park are pitching in and self-performing a lot of work to save a lot of money around other projects that are budgeted for this year. So we're looking at renovation dollars for the golf course as a kind of an aggregate number, and managing to that in and around this project, and carpet and patios and things of that nature, furniture. We're managing it all to the total dollar to keep all the projects for 2022 within that budget amount.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
So the total work to be done at the golf center this year is not to exceed what was budgeted, it's just moving around differently?
Between those individual projects,
Understood.
correct.
Okay, appreciate that explanation, that's helpful.
In some of that, what you're talking about, it looks like the pro shop is expanding. Is that what I saw in some of these pictures, or what's happening?
No, the pro shop, as you'll recall, we had the water damage from the broken fire system pipe in an office, and that office, because of some of the changes we've made in our staffing following a retirement, is not necessarily an office we need. So we're actually eliminating that office, which does allow for a different footprint of the pro shop, but we're staying within kind of the same walls of the pro shop. We're just removing an office.
In that work, instead of having that jobbed out, staff is doing that work.
Staff is doing some of that work. Also, a good amount of that work is also going to be covered through insurance.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Lindsay, would you consider making motion 8.2 for us?
Sure, I move to approve the bid from Slayton Construction in the amount of $236,587.76 for the renovation of the grill room at the Wilmette Golf Club.
I second.
Great. Further discussion? All right, roll call.
Just
yes, I'm
for
sorry.
clarification, we haven't seen the architectural drawings for the bar configuration.
We saw some schematics
That
early
resulted
on.
in-
Early, I think some of the earlier designs, yes. It's a longer bar that extends to the windows.
Is it the U-shape configuration?
It's not U-shaped, it's rectangular.
Okay. What committee meeting did we review that? Because I can't remember, but
Which version?
the version we're approving.
We did not bring it back to the committee.
We did
We've
not.
been moving very fast to try and get this done to meet the golf season.
Okay. But based on that drawing, the architect reviewed the bid and recommends it?
Correct. That was the first question we asked when we got the bid. I asked the architects to review it to see if it was in line with their expectation on cost by trade, and identified a couple areas with the construction company where they were high in one area because they didn't understand the drawings, low in another area, and they netted out to this number here.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goble.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Bid is approved.
Great. Anything else for the golf committee? All right. Next up is Parks and Rec.
Well, we had a fantastic meeting last week. No, some really kind of eye-opening numbers, for those that have children either in like summer camps or some of the summer programming or have had children go through it. You always know that it's a robust program, but you never really understand the size of it. So camp registration opened up, 2 weeks ago now? 3 weeks ago, whenever it was, 4,700 people have signed up for summer camps. That, to me, that just is astounding. Now, there's still some room in that for more people to sign up. Soccer, 1,100 kids are in soccer. So those to me were kind of surprising numbers, not really having my ever arms around the true scope of the programming that we offer in some of the parks. Legally Blonde was a performance that was put on with residents, and I'm told it was a huge success. I heard from Lindsay prior to our meeting that the egg hunt down at the Lakefront, and from Cecilia also, the dog egg hunt were quite fun. Fitness club. They're running out a new program, the Hustle 20, and it's about trying to get people to show up to the fitness club 20 times in a month. Little goals to keep people active and to generate more activity there. Let's see, gymnastics was open, so the summer session is 92% full, and kudos to the program. They produced a state all-around champion just in the last season, so that was really cool to hear. Satisfaction survey that they ran, asking for comments after programming, that kind of directed them to two new classes. There's a new Pilates class and a new yoga class that they're offering. CRC has, they mentioned 935 active members right now. Down a little bit from pre-COVID, but building slowly back up to that number. And one of the other comments I wrote down about that I found interesting was that there's an increase of over 500 visits from February to March. So people are coming out and being more active in the programming that's available to them through the Park District. So this is all great news. And let's see, I've got one of the more popular activities, this cycling, indoor spin class. So should I work this into right now? All right, so we've got a motion to approve a bid for the replacement cycling bikes. So where are we, 5.31?
Okay.
Move to approve the bid from Heartland.
Well,
You're slated to do it, it's in my committee.
Go ahead, why don't you take
Yeah,
8.1?
Okay.
Okay, trade done.
Yep.
Move to approve the bid for Heartland Fitness in the amount of $34,732.59 for 20 Schwinn AC-powered indoor cycling bikes as recommended by the Parks and Recreation Committee.
I might as well second.
Thanks.
All right, further discussion or any additional information you want to share, Steve?
Nope. So one of the comments that was brought up, I know that the spin class was held outside quite a bit during COVID, and these bikes are not going outside. Got it.
Well, it
just-
was very fun to spin outside as a frequent cycle class participant. It was a lot of wear and tear on the bikes. And so, yes, I clarified in committee that the new bikes weren't going to be bumping across the parking lot by the users, but they will be protected. So, but with the way shipping has been coming, we don't even know, well, I don't know if they've told us if they will even be in by summer. So they will, I presumably, use the old bikes until the new ones have arrived, so there shouldn't be a disruption to spin classes at all.
Right, and that's a good point, because that brings up something else that was commented on. This $34,732.59 factors in a trade-in value on the current bikes.
Great.
And it's
just
just
to
Reddit budget.
I have to add a congratulations. So it was Taylor who won the gymnastics, and I didn't realize, but it was state all-around champion for level 7. She competed against 60 other gymnasts. Really exciting. So congratulations to Taylor.
That's fantastic. Love hearing that. All right, so there's a motion. It's been seconded. Could we have a roll call?
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goble.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Bid is approved.
All right, anything else for Parks and Rec?
No, thank you.
All right, facilities met earlier tonight. I will point out that we are now referring to it as the Facilities Committee. At the start of the last board year, we used the term and centennial somewhat interchangeably, that the old board document specifically called out a centennial committee. We have obviously updated our board document last month, so now we are calling it the Facilities Committee, which is what it was referred to in its prior incarnation a number of years ago. So the Facilities Committee met earlier this evening. We did briefly review our 2021-2022 goals. I think this was the first year in a number of years that each of the committees articulated goals. I think each of the committees are going to be sort of reviewing them over the course of the month. We do actually have one more meeting before the annual meeting, so we may further discuss, but we had a brief summary of what the goals were and what progress had been made on those goals. We also talked about the paddle spring season, the fact that our paddle program has about 500 participants, and this year it appears that 277 men and 128 women are playing in the spring season, or about 80%, and that is an exceptionally high number relative to other clubs around here. We also learned that the ice show will be May 13th to the 15th, so we're back doing the good old ice shows that are incredibly popular in town, so everybody get your tickets quickly before they sell out. And there's a new traveling ice show that we're bringing here on June 5th called Ice Dreams, and apparently a number of our local skaters will have the opportunity to skate with professional skaters, including Nancy Kerrigan, as a part of that program. So very exciting, and I'm sure we're going to have, it's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of the local skaters. Tennis, the pickleball, drop-in pickleball has expanded from just Thursday AM to Monday and Tuesday afternoons. So it's now Thursday AM from 7:30 to 9 and Monday, Tuesday from 12:30 to 2. Anybody interested in playing a little pickle, Walter can give you a thumbs up of his personal experience, and I would encourage anyone to come out and give it a shot. The permanent court time renewals are going to be done differently this year. There will not be a lottery, but if there seem to be conflicts, I guess staff will find a way to work it out, try to do things a little bit differently. For the pool, we are in the process of obtaining a new food vendor. That was one of the goals that was discussed for the committee at this time last year. The pool liner is being installed, and they are implementing a new fitness program known as Fluid Running, where people can run in the deep pool with flotation devices to have less wear and tear on the joints. So anybody interested in checking that out, please contact the staff. And
Mike, you should explore that.
I'm thinking about it. And along those lines, we also reviewed a bid for an apparel purchase. So could I have a motion to approve 5.41?
I move to approve the 5.41 bid to approve the bid from Sunburst in the amount of $35,576.39 for annual recreational department apparel, in addition to the bid from Arena Sports USA in the amount of $19,037.30 for youth, fall, and spring soccer apparel, as recommended by the Facilities Committee.
And it was recommended by the Facilities Committee. A second?
Second.
All right. Any further comment or question? We do this every year. All right, roll call.
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Yes.
Commissioner Goble.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
Bid is approved.
And that's the facilities report, financial planning and policy.
Okay, yes, the financial Planning and Policy Committee met on March 21st. We had not met in February, and we then met this past March 21st. At the meeting, we received an update from Director Wilson on the Park District's DEI efforts, and he did inform us that staff attended the most recent IPRA conference, attended educational sessions dealing with, excuse me, I'm sorry, I should clarify. The members of the Wilmette Park District Social Equity Committee attended educational sessions at the IPRA conference regarding DEI efforts. Staff and the committee has also focused on DEI training that's available from DERMA, and after going through the training, they agreed it would benefit all Park District staff and have added that training to the staff training calendar. In addition, the Wilmette Park District recently hired a new employee at, I think, the CRC, who happens to also head the IPRA DEI committee. Her work with us has prompted staff to review the programs that the Wilmette Park District offers and to encourage those programs to be more inclusive. And the committee will continue to meet, and which I think should have met meeting this week to continue their discussion on the different areas. In addition, we also discussed the memorial tree, the Park District's current memorial tree policy. Catherine Servin put together an excellent survey of the memorial practices of our neighboring park districts. It was very detailed, and it was quite helpful. And her information that she had obtained led to a very good discussion regarding the Wilmette Park District's memorial practices. No actual determinations were made, but in a sense, I think our discussion gave some guidelines to staff to continue to work in updating the memorial policy within the district. Beyond that, let's see, we had down here a non-resident pricing, and to be honest, I was going through, I don't think we really discussed, I think Director Wilson provided us sort of a background on it, but we didn't really discuss that very much further, and that it will probably be up. It will be up for discussion in future committee meetings. Similar to the Financial Planning and Policy Committee, kind of approved a renewal of the Park District's relationship with our accountants, Lauterbach and Amen. I went to school with someone whose last name was Amen, so he pronounced it Amen. So Lauterbach and Amen, we have a good history with them, a very good relationship, and that we have renewed our engagement. In addition, we considered a proposal for banking service, moving our banking service to Wintrust. I think our staff has had very good interactions with Wintrust and has recommended that banking be moved there, and I think the committee agreed that would be a good choice. In addition, we went over financial statements for the month ended February 28th. There is a very good memo in our board packet from Superintendent Foy going over explaining the financial statements, and which I guess in saying that we continue to be in a very good position. There are some discrepancies, and that happens to be more of a purpose of timing, where we're getting more revenue in right now before we've actually expended the costs associated and stuff that we may not have received all the revenue yet. So as the year goes by, everything will balance out and become closer to the budget as it's worked out. So our next meeting, that's generally pretty it. The next meeting will be Monday, April 18th.
And again, I would just mention in passing, something we haven't discussed, but if the golf committee does end up moving, I might ask that we do too.
Okay, yeah,
But just
that's
something we
fine.
can work
That's
out
fine,
internally,
yes.
no problem.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. The Real Estate Committee,
Did not meet?
and I believe the Intergovernmental Cooperation Committee also did not meet. Executive Director's Report?
We did.
Oh, we did?
We did, and we met
Oh,
on
great.
topics of sustainability, sharing among the various groups, sustainability practices, as well as, other ideas for optimization across the community.
Great, I apologize. Thank you for the
That's
update.
okay.
Is there another meeting
When is
scheduled?
the next meeting?
We
Right.
tend to meet every other month, and the next meeting has not been scheduled.
You meet when? When's next?
We meet every other month generally, and we schedule about a month in advance, so no date has been set.
Thank you. All right, Executive Director's Report?
My report was very focused on the agenda items, which you all have covered already, so I do not have a report other than I can give you the intro when you call the Barry Dunn contract.
Next up is the consideration of the contract with Barry Dunn for consulting. So let's tee it up.
All right, so since the last board meeting, you all have held two special board meetings. One to hear presentations from the three consulting teams, ask them questions, get a better understanding of their approach and how they would serve the park district and the community. And then ask staff to clarify some questions for 2 out of the 3 teams, and then met again to go over that information and discussed that feedback, and ultimately made a selection of Barry Dunn at a meeting last Monday. And during this past week, we've worked with Barry Dunn as well as our legal counsel to get the contract that's up for your consideration tonight and in your packet. And once, if we approve that, we will begin the work on a comprehensive and strategic plan.
All right.
Steve, I have one question. I think you mentioned in that the contract, there was a discrepancy in the amounts. Did that mean the amounts went up by that discrepancy?
Yeah, in total, so as I was reviewing the numbers, trying to understand the different 3 submissions and trying to identify value between them, I started my own kind of spreadsheets and calculation. I noticed that the totals didn't foot in the Barry Dunn, and it was actually short by about $13,000 compared to the individual numbers that it added up to. When I asked that question during the contract process, they actually noted a couple other errors, and it was really their gathering of information from their subcontractors, Woodhouse, Tanucci, Acuity, and said actually the $13,000 error is actually an $8,000. So it went from $220 if we did the additional services to $228.
Thank you.
And at what point in the cycle of the contract is there a cutoff point, where are we on the hook for the full price unless we remove, or are we committing to the base price and choose to add on by a certain date? Like, how are we working with some of the ambiguity in there?
Right, we're committing to the base services, and then those 2 additionals we can add, and we would come back and get that authorization. Also, we're in discussion with them to bring on a marketing firm to help with outreach and communication as well. Just this afternoon, they sent 3 different proposals that they've sourced for us. Our marketing department's taking a look at that as well. We might source some on our own as well and see if that's something that we want to add to this project in the future.
And then, does the not to exceed include expenses? Because I noticed that there were expenses budgeted throughout the line items. So how did that land?
That's a direct reimbursable. I asked that question during the process. So in the proposal, they have placeholder estimates, but it's whatever is actually produced. We're just direct cost.
So the not to exceed is exclusive of expenses,
Correct.
but they will be billed at cost.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, I know it's in the proposal, but this is about a year-long process.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of work went into that with the staff vetting and going back and forth with Barry Dunn team and all the other teams until we got to that point. So thank you, Steve, and the staff for all of that. And I'm excited to move forward with this.
I'm very excited about it, absolutely. I think we all are. So, could I have a motion?
Oh, I guess that's me.
I'll move to approve the contract with Barry Dunn for consulting.
I'll second.
All right, any further question, comment?
My only comment I know that Walter saw the meetings, and it, there was.
Mary was here earlier, she did too.
Yeah, it was an interesting process to me, and what we're talking about going forward with here. As I had mentioned, I'm a self-employed individual. I don't have to do, well, I should maybe do strategic planning. So this is really going to be, I'm looking forward to it because it's really going to be an eye-opening endeavor for me, but also for the Park District. I have confidence in Steve and his staff, but I think maybe it may tweak some of the things that they do and help us all. And hopefully the community will get involved. I mean, there's going to be a survey going out, and we'd love to hear from as many people as possible, so.
Other questions or comments? All right, then a roll call.
Commissioner Duffy.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Kozlowskis.
Yes.
Commissioner Clark.
Abstain.
Commissioner Goebel.
Yes.
Commissioner Murdoch.
Yes.
The contract is approved.
All right, great. And I think that concludes every item on our agenda, so I would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Well done.
Finally,
Yes, get in there.
move.
Yes.
I'll move to adjourn, yeah.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for coming this evening.